Hey, it's Greg on here with MaritimeGardening.com, and today I'm going to plant some parsnips, and I'm going to use a technique which I have found does an incredible job of keeping the weeds down, feeding the soil, and so on. It's a kind of mulching, but you know, and I guess you could call it woodchip mulching in a sense, but it's a different kind of woodchip, right? If you watch the Back to Eden film, which is a very popular film, there's a guy there and he's using wood chips all over his garden. He's getting amazing results. And not everyone can find wood chips or source them. As easy as they make it sound in the film, it's not always that easy. I'm able to get them for my garden here, but it's not like I have dozens of tree services begging me to take the wood chips off their hands. I have to call around and really, you know, aggressively pursue them to get them. I find here where I am, and it's not like there's a shortage of trees. It's Halifax, which is the city near where I live, is full of trees. There are trees everywhere. If you look at it from overhead, it looks like a forest, even though it's a city. Not everywhere, but I mean, like, you know, the surrounding area just looks like trees with little houses stuck in it. It's kind of pretty. But anyway, I think a lot of people are looking in the wrong place for wood chips. A dumpster is a good place to look because you can get this kind of wood chip, right? And this is a kind of wood chip that worms love to eat. Worms love cardboard. So it's there, it's free, it's all in one place. You know, you just back your car up, open up the dumpster, forget about what everybody else is thinking, and dig out some cardboard boxes, and on a rainy day you cut them into strips like this. And you put them between the rows where you're going to plant stuff, and they keep the soil moist. As they break down, they feed the organisms in the soil, and any sort of weed that germinates, they really can't find their way through them. I've also used the bags from the bags at leaf bag bags, you know, this sort of thing. These work too. These work great, and people throw them away, so they're easy to get a hold of. This is wood chips too, right? This is a tree product that worms like to eat. It'll feed your soil, and it'll keep the sun off your soil and keep it moist and maintain your moisture levels and all that sort of stuff as well. But I find, especially if I'm doing a fall planting here, so this is early November, and I'm planting parsnips. I've found that if you sow them in November, they come up just fine the following spring. Where I am, zone 6A, the seeds can take the winter here, and who knows, they might even partially germinate before the following season. I don't know, but it seems to work. And I find cardboard, where I am, takes a while to break down. I've heard people say their cardboard breaks down in weeks. I put cardboard on the soil here. It takes like a season to break down, especially if it's on top. Sure, if you bury it, you know, I think more things are going to get at it. It takes a while for it to break down, so I'm putting it down right now because I'm sowing, but next spring, when all the weed seeds germinate, if this is on top of them, it'll still have enough integrity to keep them coming through, and it'll greatly reduce your need to weed. So let me show you what I got going on here. I've got over there I got a garden where I planted parsnips using the same technique last year, and I'm getting parsnips like this out of there, right? This is about average. I've got bigger ones, I got smaller ones, but this is about average. That's a nice parsnip. You're not going to find too many of this size consistently in a grocery store. And of course, if you grow your own, you'll find they taste better, especially if you harvest them in after it's starting to get really cold. When you start needing gloves to be outside, when there's frost every morning, when all the tops start to die and all that sort of stuff, the plant starts converting the root and the starches in the root to something more sugar-like. If you harvest them at that time, they store better, and of course, which is the most important thing, they taste better. So I let my couple biggest ones of this variety, this is an open pollinated, it's actually an heirloom variety, I can't remember the name of it, but it's an open pollinated variety. It's like something crown, triple crown, great crown, white crown, regal crown, maybe regal crown. Anyway, these ones, if you leave a couple in the ground and just leave them there all winter long, they'll start to grow again in spring, and they'll make a plant about 4 feet high with all kinds of flowers on it. And when the flowers go to seed, we're going to put those over here. The flowers go to seed, and you leave them long enough for sometime in August, you'll get seeds like this, right? Nice seeds. I mean, the seeds are mixed in with all kinds of rubbish here. It doesn't matter, right? I don't need them to be perfect. I'm going to put a lot of these down. When you save your own seeds, you get, I got a whole bunch in here, thousands, right? But I've got more that I put aside as well, right? These are the last ones I harvested, and I harvested some other ones about maybe 3 weeks before I harvested these. at what I would say is an ideal time. I'm gonna plant the ones in this bed where I was the laziest at collecting them. I started collecting them when I noticed, you know, I was out in the garden and a breeze went by and I noticed the seeds falling to the ground. So that's nature telling me it's time to collect the seeds, right? There's no more time. They're all going to fall down if you don't harvest them now. So they were on the plant for the longest. Yeah, and you get something like this the following year. They take like almost a whole year. Take like 9-10 months to grow, but it's totally worth it because you don't, especially if you do it this way, you don't have to do anything. Right, I weeded the ones I planted last year. I didn't use this cardboard technique, so I weeded them once and I thinned them once. So with this technique, the weeding will be reduced by like 90%, and I'll probably only have to, you know, maybe take almost no time at all to weed this. There should be tiny amounts of weeds, and all you really have to do is thin them. Right, you sow them heavily, doesn't matter because you got infinite seeds, and then you space them out with your thinning, and you know, if they're large enough when you do that, you can eat the ones you thinned as well. So step one is to get some, and I've got the existing soil here. I just built this bed, and I used a kind of hugelkultur technique. I took the soil out, I put some rotten logs down, I put some leaves down, and some stuff like that, some old weeds and things like that. And then I put the soil back on, so I got half decent soil here. This was a strawberry garden last year, but this whole area went to hell, and I've decided to sort of redesign it, and I'm planting parsnips here today. So first thing I need to do is get some really super rich stuff. You don't need to do this, but it never hurts to put, like, you know, excellent soil. So let me show you what I do with that. I've got 3 beds here that I grow things like squash and potatoes in. This is outside my garden enclosure, and I can only grow things outside the garden enclosure that deer and things like that seem to leave alone. I found they leave potatoes and squash alone. But once a year in the spring, I dig some of the soil up in one of these from a different one each year and put it in a bucket like this. Right, and just set it aside as gardening soil. So this is wonderfully rich stuff. It's beautiful. You couldn't buy anything better than this in a store. Actually, I don't think you could buy anything as good. Nice, rich, dark soil, and this is just rotten manure and leaves and weeds and stuff, right, from one of those beds I just showed you. So I'm just going to put a bit of that in here. Beautiful dark stuff, right? Nice stuff. And there's tons of weed seeds in here, so, you know, and people get a little bit too bent into shape about weeds. You can sort of work with them, and even when they grow, they make a fantastic addition to your compost. Anyway, that's all I need. I think that's more than enough for what I'm about to do. Alright, so I got my seeds and I got my cardboard, and I got some really nice stuff to just amend the soil a tiny bit, just give everything a little head start, and I got some mulch to put on top to keep the paper from blowing away. So I cut these in strips on a rainy day. The very end, of course, you don't want to have them right against the end, so put a piece at either end. I had one pre-cut here. This one's pre-cut for this spot right here. Yeah. Now for the ones on this side, I'm going to use a fairly tight spacing just as an experiment to see. You want them about an inch apart. I mean, these are going to move around a little bit, so you don't want them to be on top of the parsnips when they germinate. But I've used wider spacings in the past, but all that does is give the weeds more real estate. So I think about an inch is all you need. Right, like that. So I'm going to do half this bed using a fairly close spacing, which is not recommended on the seed package. Then on the other half of the bed, I'm going to use something a little bit, you know, this hand span space is what I tend to use in my garden as a general rule. I think that's, you know, a good way to go. So I'm going to use that spacing for the remainder of these, and we'll compare the size a year from now. Hopefully this all works out. And of course, if this fails, I'll just plant some next spring, because I planted some in the last spring. I planted some as well, and they turned out just fine. Right, it worked great. So you know, you can use more than one method, right? It's not a law. Piece here, I think, just enough room. Yes, perfect. Perfect. All right, good. Okay, so I got that done. So now I basically completed my weeding. And you noticed in some of these I've left the tape on, and some I don't worry about it. As you're working the soil in subsequent years, you'll find pieces of tape in your soil. You just stick them in your pocket, throw them in the trash. I find it's easier to just let the worms sort that all out. And you know, you find the tape probably takes a millennium to break down. You'll find pieces of it in your soil as you go, and I just find it's quicker. Everything should be easy, right? So I let the worms take the tape off for me. It just makes it easier for me. I'm not too worried about, you know, whatever particles of tape might get into my soil, and I'm not too worried about contamination on that end. I'm sure there's going to be people that freak out over that, but I don't worry about it. Just the broader scheme of things, it's not that big a deal. Alright, so I got those. I'm just going to put these seeds down. I'm going to be very liberal. Right? I'm going to put lots down. And when you buy seeds from a seed provider, they're incredibly, like my sponsor, Vessi Seeds, they select their varieties and they save the seeds, and they do everything in a way that guarantees germination, right? High rate of germination is what they want to promise you. Also you're paying for them, right? But when you're using your own, you're probably not going to get the same rate of germination. But it doesn't matter if 1 in 10 germinate. Let's say you have, you know, if you buy seeds, you got 70, 80, 90% germination, which is great. But you need that when you bought a tiny pack, right? When you're saving your own, and they're basically free, you can go crazy, right? You can plant as many as you want. You don't have to worry about germination. Because if 1 in 10 germinates and you've planted 100, you're going to get 10, right? I'm planting, like, throwing down thousands of seeds here, and I got lots more. This bucket here isn't the only seeds I've got. I can afford to be a bit over the top here with my sowing. It'll all work itself out just fine. And another good reason to save your seeds, parsnip seeds don't persist. That is to say, the seeds don't store. If you save parsnip seeds, they're good for like 1 season. And they're really, you know, the germination rate falls rapidly after a season. So if you got them, use them. Don't hold back, just use them. Alright, so just going to shake these superfluous ones off. Instead of having them blow all over the place, they might as well blow into my soil. They're not going to go anywhere. Right? They're sort of designed or have evolved to stay where they're stuck. A little bit of an adjustment on this piece here. Take this end off too. Put the leftover pieces in the ground. At least not one nut. There we go. Alright, done. Now I'm going to take that nice soil that I just harvested. Oh, a few more here. Tip those guys down into. Put this on, just to give them something really good something to chew on, right? Remember, in nature, these things just fall to the ground and grow. So you don't have to, and this is the way they grow. I've had them I've actually got some coming up in various parts of my garden, ones that blew off the plants that these came from, that I didn't get to. So, you know, they self-sow, and you don't need to do a lot of work, right? There's not a lot required. I'm just trying to up the ante a bit, but you could probably get away with this step. You don't have to do it. I've got the soil, so why not throw it on there, right? Why not give it every possible advantage? Clean this up in a second. Alright. Alright, we got that. The thing about how this cardboard is you got something to kneel on too. Okay, let's tip that in. Now I'm going to work my way over as I go here. I'm putting this seaweed on here. If you put it on thin enough, you can use whatever you know. If you live somewhere where you're not near the ocean, just use straw or hay or something like that. Something that'll sort of not blow away. Right, something that'll stick around. I'm putting this on here just to keep the cardboard from blowing away. Really, that's all I'm really going for here. And this is loose enough that, at least in my experience, they seem to have no problem finding their way through it. The parsnips can get through it. Boy, it smells like a sushi bar in here. I love sushi. I don't have any hay right now. I gotta go get some from the horse stable where I normally get it. When I get some hay, I'm gonna sprinkle a little bit on here as well, just to make sure that this is kept nice and warm over the winter, and so that the wind doesn't blow this stuff away. Sometimes I'll take my seaweed and cut it up, but this seaweed is covered in sand, so it would just dull the scissors pretty bad. And I've found it's, you know, it's nice. It feels nice to cut it up because you're creating this beautiful mulch medium, but it's not necessary. This is a bit. I'm actually going to make this one a tiny bit thinner. You can use a knife for this, or scissors, whatever you can get your hands on. A knife. I couldn't find my scissors this morning, so just using a knife. You don't need a fishing knife like this. You can use anything. You know, utility knife is probably better in many ways. All right, that's good. That's a bit thick too. I want to thin that down a little bit. The good thing about this cardboard is it's got lines, right? So you can gauge your cut and try to do it without slicing an artery. Not recommended. That's good. Alright, here we go. Alright, we'll do the rest of the seaweed. I like to do the ends first because it just holds everything in place. You don't want to be so fussy. Another reason I've noticed that seaweed's good for putting over something you've sown is that it doesn't really suppress weeds as well as other mulches, because the light can get through it. So if it can't suppress a weed, it probably can't suppress a parsnip. And a parsnip's a very weed-like plant. There's, you know, I believe Queen Anne's lace, and there's a number of other. I think cow parsnip. There's a number of different wild plants which you can't eat. Some of them are very poisonous, in fact. But I mean, they're fairly tenacious, and they can find their way through things pretty easily. You just put it on loosely. With rain and with time, this will all just sort of hold itself in place. The cardboard will sort of glue itself to the soil. It just has a way of anchoring itself, especially if you anchor in the ends like I'm doing here. A little bit extra stuff, whatever you're using. If you're going to use leaves for this, I'd use something very fine. You don't want a big heavy oak leaf or something like that, because it might prevent things from happening. And you want something to happen, right? You don't want to smother out the seedlings when they actually do come up. Now, of course, these are going to move around a lot over the course of the winter. But if you do it like this, everything should just sort itself out, at least in my experience. Hope I got enough of this here. See, I'm just putting it on the cardboard. I'm focusing on getting this on the cardboard, and I'm letting little bits of it sort of snake their way into the middle on their own. That'll happen just with time. You don't have to worry about it. And that's just one less thing I have to do next spring, right? These will just take care of themselves. And at the height of the summer, when I've got horseflies and stuff out here, I don't have to go through the chore of weeding these. So easy peasy. Alright, so there we go. In a relatively short amount of time, I got a 4x6 bed of parsnips all planted and tucked in and ready to go next year. And hopefully these seeds are viable, and hopefully this worked. It worked last year. It seems to just happen randomly on its own all over my garden. So, I mean, I've had people make comments saying, why don't you just let them self-seed? Well, I want to get optimum results, right? I want them to be spaced. I don't want them competing with weeds. I want to get, I want to get nice ones like this, not little weird ones that are a pain to deal with, right? And I want nice big fat ones. So I'm taking advantage of what naturally happens and just adding a little bit of tweaks so that it happens the way I want it to happen to get the results I'm looking for as a gardener. So that's how I do it. And we're all set for next year, and this is done. So I hope you found that interesting, and if you haven't given parsnips a try before, go to the seed place. You can order them from my sponsor, Best Seeds, if you want. And I don't know if this works with hybrid varieties. I've only ever done this with my heirlooms. Who knows? I really don't know. I can't speak to that. But it certainly works with the heirloom or open-pollinated varieties, at least the ones I've tried. I'm sure there's variants in different areas and so on. Remember, I'm in zone 6A, so I don't know if this works in zone 5 or 4. It's worth, pick one area in your garden and give it a try this year and see if it works. And if it works, do more of it. Right? That's what I do. I hope you found that interesting, and if you did, please like, share, subscribe. Check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com, and until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching.